The early life of Vlad the Impaler, 1431 to 1448, Vlad the Third, commonly known as Vlad the Impaler or Vlad Tzepes, was born in 1431 in the Transylvanian town of Sighișoara in the Kingdom of Hungary. He was the second legitimate son of Vlad II Dracul, a member of the noble house of Draculești, a branch of the ruling Basarab dynasty of Wallachia. Vlad II's surname Dracul, meaning the dragon, was derived from his induction into the Order of the Dragon, a chivalric order founded by Holy Roman Emperor Sigismund to defend Christianity in Eastern Europe against the Ottoman Turks. The name Dracula, meaning son of the dragon or son of Dracul, would be passed down to his son, Vlad III. Vlad's early life was shaped by the political turbulence of Eastern Europe during the 15th century. Wallachia, his homeland, was a volatile principality sandwiched between powerful rivals, the Ottoman Empire to the south and Hungary to the northwest. As the child of a voivode, Vlad's life was not only aristocratic but also militarized from the beginning. He was exposed to court intrigues, feudal politics, and the constant threat of foreign domination. His father's position required balancing diplomacy with both empires, a dangerous act that would lead to the family's repeated rise and fall. In 1442, the fragile peace between Wallachia and the Ottomans collapsed. Sultan Murad II summoned Vlad II Dracul for negotiations, ostensibly to reaffirm their alliance. Instead, he was coerced into leaving two of his sons, Vlad III, aged 11, and his younger brother Radu, as hostages to the Ottoman court in Edirne, Adrianople. This period profoundly affected young Vlad. While Radu, who would later be known as Radu the Handsome, assimilated and eventually converted to Islam, Vlad grew bitter, resentful, and increasingly distrustful of the Ottomans. The boy was exposed to both Islamic culture and Ottoman military strategy, but also to brutality, servitude, and humiliation. It's said that during his captivity, he witnessed or suffered physical punishment, which some speculate may have instilled in him a cold, retaliatory outlook on power. Meanwhile, his father, trying to maintain his rule, was forced to navigate a dangerous web of loyalties. Wallachian boyars, noble elites, increasingly turned against Vlad II for what they saw as his betrayal of Christian alliances. In 1447, he was assassinated in a Hungarian-backed coup, and Vlad's older brother, Mircea was captured, blinded, and buried alive by Wallachian boyars. This brutal turn of events left Vlad III with a burning desire for vengeance and a deep mistrust of both foreign powers and Wallachian nobility. Vlad III was released from Ottoman captivity around 1448, likely under strategic terms designed to install a puppet ruler in Wallachia. He briefly seized the throne with Ottoman backing in October 1448, capitalizing on the political chaos that followed the death of John Hunyadi, the regent of Hungary and one of the leading Christian commanders in the region. However, Vlad's initial reign was extremely short-lived, only about 2 months, before he was ousted by Vladislav II, a pro-Hungarian noble backed by Hunyadi's loyalists. This brief and unsuccessful stint as ruler marked the beginning of Vlad's long and bloody path to consolidating power. Though still relatively young, he had already experienced political betrayal, imprisonment, family loss, and war. These events hardened him and fostered the violent authoritarian traits that would later define his reign. He would spend the next few years moving between Moldavia and Hungary, forging alliances, gathering support, and preparing to reclaim his rightful place as voivode. In exile, Vlad honed his military knowledge and political acumen, learning to navigate the ever-shifting tides of allegiance that defined Balkan geopolitics. These formative years, marked by pain, betrayal, and perseverance, shaped the man who would later become infamous across Europe. They forged not only a ruthless prince, but a cold tactician and a master of psychological warfare. When he would return to Wallachia, it would not be with the aim of simply ruling, it would be with the single-minded desire to purge it of its perceived corruption and to make a blood-soaked statement to both his enemies and allies. The reign of Vlad the Impaler, 1456 to 1462. After a brief and unsuccessful first reign in 1448, Vlad III would spend nearly a decade in exile, biding his time and cultivating alliances. The political climate of Eastern Europe was still in flux. The Ottoman Empire was expanding aggressively into the Balkans, while the Kingdom of Hungary was desperate to defend Christian lands. In this volatile landscape, Vlad saw his opportunity. By 1456, with the backing of Hungarian forces under John Hunyadi, Vlad marched into Wallachia to confront and defeat his rival, Vladislav II, who had usurped his throne years earlier. Vlad personally killed Vladislav II in combat, likely in single combat or ambush, and reclaimed the voivodeship. At just 25 years old, he was now in control of a realm riddled with internal betrayal and external threats. Vlad's second reign, 1456-1462, is the most significant and infamous period of his life. He ruled Wallachia with an iron fist, launching a ferocious campaign to consolidate power, restore order, and repel Ottoman encroachment. One of his first and most brutal acts was a bloody purge of the Wallachian boyars, the same noble class that had betrayed and murdered his father and brother. During Easter of 1457, Vlad invited hundreds of boyars and their families to a feast. Once gathered, he ordered them seized and impaled, or forced the able-bodied to march over 50 miles to build his new fortress at Poenari. Many died from exhaustion or impalement shortly thereafter. This act served not just as vengeance, but as a warning. Treason would not be tolerated. Vlad's most notorious method of punishment, impalement, became both his symbol and psychological weapon. He used sharpened wooden stakes to skewer enemies through the abdomen, chest, or anus, with the victim often living for hours or even days in agony. These horrific executions were carried out en masse. Entire forests of impaled corpses were erected to terrify potential enemies or criminals. This earned him his famous Romanian moniker, Țepeș, meaning the Impaler. Foreigners began to whisper of him as a sadistic monster, while others, especially in Hungary and Germany, circulated pamphlets that painted him as a bloodthirsty tyrant. But Vlad's brutality served a purpose. His reign, though terrifying, was marked by rigid justice, order, and military discipline. Crime dropped dramatically. Merchants paid taxes without evasion. A legendary tale recounts how Vlad placed a golden cup at a public fountain in Târgoviște, the capital, to prove that under his rule, not even a priceless artifact would be stolen, and it never was. By the late 1450s, the Ottoman threat was rising. Sultan Mehmed II, who had conquered Constantinople in 1453, demanded tribute from Wallachia. Vlad refused. In 1461, Vlad launched a preemptive campaign into Ottoman territory, crossing the Danube with a force of 20,000 men. He laid waste to Turkish villages, massacring tens of thousands. His troops used guerrilla tactics, burned towns, and even poisoned wells, inflicting heavy casualties and terror across Bulgaria. In 1462, enraged by Vlad's defiance, Sultan Mehmed II led a massive army, some estimate over 100,000 soldiers, into Wallachia to crush him. Severely outnumbered, Vlad adopted scorched earth tactics, destroying crops, evacuating villages, and leaving no provisions for the enemy. In a dramatic act of psychological warfare, Vlad lined the road to Târgoviște with over 20,000 impaled corpses, captured Turks, traitors, and prisoners. This grotesque sight shocked even the hardened Ottoman veterans and reportedly disturbed Mehmed himself. Perhaps the most famous moment of this campaign was the night attack at Târgoviște in June 1462. Vlad led a daring night raid on the Ottoman camp, hoping to assassinate the Sultan. Though he failed to kill Mehmed, the raid caused chaos, panic, and thousands of casualties. The Ottomans eventually withdrew, though not decisively defeated. Despite his tactical brilliance, Vlad's reign began to crumble. His brother Radu the Handsome, now a loyal Ottoman ally, was sent with Turkish forces to replace him. Radu, more charismatic and favored by many Wallachian boyars, gained support and gradually pushed Vlad from power. By late 1462, Vlad was forced to flee into Transylvania, seeking aid from his former Hungarian allies. But betrayal awaited him again. Matthias Corvinus, the king of Hungary, imprisoned Vlad under dubious charges, possibly to appease the Ottomans or due to pressure from pro-Radu factions. Thus ended Vlad's blood-soaked reign for the time being. His fall from power marked the end of one of the most terrifying and chaotic regimes in Eastern Europe. But even in exile and imprisonment, the legend of Vlad the Impaler only continued to grow. The death of Vlad the Impaler, 1476 to 1477, after his imprisonment by King Matthias Corvinus of Hungary in 1462, Vlad the Impaler spent approximately 1214 years in captivity, likely held at Visegrad, north of Buda. Though kept under watch, he was treated more like a political prisoner than a common criminal. Over time, as European fears of the Ottomans grew, Vlad's image as a fierce anti-Turk warrior regained appeal. By the early 1470s, he had converted or reaffirmed his Catholic faith, married a relative of Matthias, and was slowly reintegrated into Hungarian politics. In 1476, after years in the shadows, Vlad was restored to the throne of Wallachia with Hungarian and Moldavian backing. His return came at a time of growing instability in the region. His younger brother Radu, who had ruled Wallachia under Ottoman influence, had recently died. Vlad's reinstallation marked his third and final reign, but it lasted only a matter of months. Wallachia was a battlefield of shifting loyalties, and Vlad found himself in a fragile, temporary alliance with Moldavian Prince Stephen the Great against the Turks and pro-Ottoman factions. In December 1476 or January 1477, Vlad was ambushed near Bucharest, likely by forces loyal to the Ottomans or rival boyars. The exact details of his death remain murky, lost to time and political myth. One widely accepted version states that he was killed in battle, possibly during a skirmish with Ottoman troops. Another, more tragic version suggests he was accidentally struck down by his own men, who mistook him for an enemy during a chaotic engagement. Even his corpse became a symbol of terror and control. The Ottomans, upon discovering his death, reportedly decapitated his body and sent his severed head to Sultan Mehmed II, who had it displayed on a stake in Constantinople as proof of his demise. The location of Vlad's burial remains uncertain. Some believe he was interred at the monastery of Snagov, an island monastery north of Bucharest, where a tomb marked with his name was found, but when excavated, it was empty. Others suggest his true grave lies elsewhere, hidden by allies or lost to the violence of the time. Though his death ended his brutal reign, it was far from the end of his legend. The legacy of Vlad the Impaler, Vlad the Third Tzepes, left behind one of the most complex and controversial legacies in European history. In Romania, he is remembered as a national hero, a ruler who fought fiercely for independence, punished corruption, and upheld law and order with ruthless efficiency. To many Romanians, Vlad is not a monster, but a symbol of justice, resistance, and strength in the face of Ottoman domination and internal treachery. His reign is seen as a time when crime disappeared, borders were defended, and enemies feared the very mention of his name. But outside of Romania, particularly in Western Europe, Vlad became infamous not for heroism, but for sheer brutality. German and Hungarian pamphlets from the late 15th century spread lurid tales of his mass executions, impalements, and psychological cruelty. These exaggerated or fabricated stories cemented his reputation as a bloodthirsty tyrant. His name evoked horror long before fiction transformed it. The most enduring aspect of Vlad's legacy emerged in the 19th century when Irish author Bram Stoker published his Gothic horror novel Dracula in 1897. Though the connection between Vlad and Count Dracula is indirect, it's undeniable. Stoker borrowed the name Dracula from historical texts referencing Vlad Dracula and incorporated elements of Transylvanian history and folklore, though he never visited the region. Stoker's Dracula is an immortal vampire, a creature of night who drinks human blood, not a warlord, but a supernatural monster. Over time, the two figures, Vlad the Impaler and Count Dracula, blurred together in popular imagination. Vlad's real history was overshadowed by the myth. Films, novels, and pop culture turned him into a dark legend, inspiring generations of vampire stories from Bela Lugosi's iconic 1931 portrayal to modern reinterpretations in books and cinema. Today, Vlad the Impaler occupies a dual role in global consciousness, a patriotic symbol in Eastern Europe and a Gothic horror icon in the West. His name, Dracula, has become synonymous with vampires, darkness, and the eerie Carpathian landscapes of Romania. Yet beneath the myths lies a real man, ruthless, intelligent, and unrelenting, whose life was stranger and bloodier than fiction.